Saltarine had everything she could possibly want, except for one crucial thing: the freedom to choose her own path. Life was comfortable but dull, leaving her feeling as though her choices had been taken away. When a traveler arrived in town and helped her evade the guards, Saltarine seized the opportunity to hear about the outside world. Mikoto, pleased by her kindness in offering food and shelter, happily shared stories. The next morning, Saltarine burst into Mikoto's room and was surprised to discover that Mikoto was a boy. Meanwhile, a group of ogres set their sights on the kingdom. Their leader barged into the king's throne room, presenting an offer that was more like a threat. The ogre demanded that the kingdom sacrifice 30 people to them every month, or else face utter destruction. After leaving the king to consider his proposal, the ogre noticed Mikoto and hastily fled, abandoning his menacing threat. But Mikoto, sensing the ogre's presence, refused to let him escape. Intrigued, Saltarine felt a strange urge to witness the unfolding events and personally witnessed Mikoto's intense determination to confront the ogre. Saltarine is scared and warns Mikoto to run. The big ogre wants to fight Mikoto, but Mikoto cuts off his hand. It is revealed that Mikoto is a traveler who hunts ogres. Later, Saltarine is conflicted about Mikoto's violent actions. Mikoto decides to leave, and Saltarine tries to follow him, but is stopped by the dead ogre. She falls to her knees in disgust. Mikoto keeps walking, and Saltarine realizes that he's been gone for a month, and she's been dreaming of him. Saltarine talks to her father and tells him she's going on an adventure. She cuts her hair as a symbol of her determination. Her father supports her and tells her to take care of herself. Saltarine, a young princess who had never been outside her village, found a strange creature in the forest. She wasn't sure what it was, but it seemed friendly. When it looked hungry, Saltarine gave it a carrot. She learned that the creature was called Fra and could talk a little. Fra decided to join Saltarine on her journey to repay the carrot. They arrived at a village, but the people there didn't like creatures like Fra. Saltarine got Fra a cloak so they could sneak back in. They met the village lord, who offered them food and a place to sleep. The lord said they welcomed travelers who saved them from monsters, but not demi-humans like Fra. The next day, an ogre came to the village and Saltarine felt drawn to it. Fra protected Saltarine by defeating the ogre quickly. As they left the village, some knights captured them and took them to their city. But the knights didn't want to keep them locked up. The commander, Hawthorne, saw what happened with the ogre and realized Fra wasn't dangerous. They convinced Hawthorne to buy them lunch before they continued their journey. However, the city was attacked by 2 strong ogres. Fra told Saltarine to run while it fought the ogres, but Saltarine worried if Fra would survive. The orge managed to grab Fra and threw her into the air. As Fra was falling, Saltarine encouraged her not to give up. The ogres, determined to defeat them both, was about to attack when suddenly his hand was cut off. It was revealed that another peach, just like the one in the old Momotaro story, appeared by the riverside. Saltarine had caused a lot of concern for Ogre, who unleashed his full power, feeling ashamed that he had to use it against a mere human. But to his surprise, when the dust settled, Saltarine was unharmed and Fra was protected behind her. Ogre couldn't believe it. He wondered what kind of monster he was facing. Meanwhile, Mikoto caught up with the other ogre outside the city. She was still in her weakened form after using most of her power to fire her eye cannon. Mikoto decided they should talk while they waited for her to regain her strength fully. He thought it wouldn't be fair to kill her in her current state. The ogre revealed her hatred for humans and how they had destroyed the land to build the castle. Mikoto laughed, believing that their ideals were based on mutual hatred between ogres and humans rather than saving the natural world. After Saltarine defeated Big Ogre with a powerful strike to his chest, she became exhausted and passed out. When she woke up later, Fra was sitting beside her bed, and Hawthorne joined them soon after. He led them to a cell where the defeated ogre from outside the city was held captive. Mikoto had removed her horn and ogre eye, leaving her defenseless. Hawthorne asked Saltarine and Fra to keep an eye on the ogre until she woke up. But when Hawthorne left, Fra revealed that the ogre was actually awake and pretending to be asleep. Realizing that her powers and the source of her powers were gone, she planned to let them kill her. However, Saltarine disagreed with that plan and decided to set her free. They fled from the city and were confronted by Hawthorne. Just as he was about to chase them, the entire city was suddenly destroyed in a blinding flash of light. Nothing remained of the city except for a smoldering pile of rubble. Hawthorne dropped to his knees, unable to fully comprehend the devastation before him. Another ogre appeared, casually strolling towards them. It commented on the ogre they had just rescued, stating that she had become human now and should have allowed herself to die. Agreeing with the statement, she waited for Samenki to end her life. Saltarine rushed in and intervened, questioning why the ogre couldn't simply stay with them. Samenki didn't seem to appreciate her boldness and was about to attack Saltarine and Fra when a voice in its head commanded it to stop. It was ordered to return, and reluctantly, Samenki obeyed, leaving Saltarine and Fra feeling relieved yet terrified. They made their way to the nearest town, but everything they possessed had been destroyed in the city, including their money, weapons, and food. All they had was the spare change that Hawthorne had in his pocket. He managed to find a place for them to stay, but he had to personally vouch for Fra and the ogre before they were allowed in. Hawthorne handed the money to Saltarine and asked her to buy food. He put on a brave face, but the situation was taking a toll on him. Fra asked the ogre what she should be called, and since she didn't have a name, Fra decided to call her Carrot. While Saltarine contemplated why people hated each other solely based on appearance, she unexpectedly ran into Mikoto again. He tried to offer her some insights, but when she asked him to join her, he expressed a preference for working alone. Upon returning to their room, Hawthorne had brought back one of his guards who had survived thanks to a witch teleporting them out of the city before its destruction. Saltarine expressed her desire to meet this witch, despite Hawthorne's reservations. Saltarine managed to convince him, and they proceeded with the meeting. Saltarine and her party entered a massive old tree that also served as a bar, the home of Winnie the Witch. They discovered that Winnie had been anticipating their arrival. Hawthorne expressed gratitude to Winnie for saving his friend and inquired about her presence there. Winnie simply replied that she had been reading. It was then that Saltarine stepped forward and made a bold request, asking Winnie to teach her magic. Despite normally not entertaining such requests, Winnie sensed Saltarine's trustworthiness and believed she wouldn't betray her. According to Winnie, anyone could learn magic, but the more people who possessed that knowledge, the less valuable it became. However, before agreeing to teach Saltarine, Winnie outlined 3 conditions. First, Saltarine must keep it a secret. Second, she must obey Winnie without question. And third, she must pay Winnie 1 million. However, Saltarine didn't have that kind of money, and even with Winnie's offer of a discounted price based on what they currently had, they still came up empty-handed. Disappointed but determined, Saltarine turned to Hawthorne and requested that he teach her swordsmanship instead. Hawthorne agreed and began training her. He was surprised by her technique, though not in a positive way. Despite being smaller than him, Saltarine persistently attempted to overpower him rather than playing to her own strengths. After the training session, Winnie took Hawthorne aside and showed him the battle with Set, leaving him shocked at Saltarine's immense power. As night approached, Winnie allowed them to stay the night in exchange for cleaning the rooms. Fra had a private conversation with Winnie, revealing that they were old friends and hinting that there was more to Fra than met the eye. Fra pleaded with Winnie to teach Saltarine, and after some consideration, Winnie agreed but insisted that Saltarine would have to repay her eventually. Saltarine woke up the next morning to the delightful news from Winnie that her request had been granted. Saltarine had barely begun her magical training when a lizard man and an elf appeared. They sought Winnie's assistance in lifting a barrier protecting a dangerous ogre, as they intended to destroy it due to the havoc it had wreaked on a neighboring kingdom. Winnie agreed to their request on the condition that Saltarine's party could join them. Upon reaching the location, they discovered that another ogre had already awakened the colossal tree ogre and was determined to kill Saltarine. Despite initial resistance, the lizardmen and elves decide to work together, guided by a human, to defeat the tree ogre. However, Saltarine steps forward with a bold proposal. She suggests striving for peace. Peace between humans, ogres, and demi-humans. It may sound crazy, but she wonders if it could actually work. Unfortunately, the answer turns out to be no, at least not with the tree ogre. The massive creature grabs Saltarine, intending to crush her with one of its roots. To everyone's surprise, Saltarine's power suddenly activates, and she effortlessly breaks free. The tree ogre explains that ogres are born from human hatred and are therefore destined to fight and despise humans. And he also said Saltarine represents the opposite side of the coin. The attention of the tree ogre then turns to Milia, a hair ogre whom it deems weak and unworthy of existence. Unexpectedly, Saltarine steps in to defend Milia, realizing that there might be a chance for peace with her kind. However, the tree ogre is too consumed by rage to consider any alternative. Saltarine has no choice but to engage in a battle. Meanwhile, Mikoto finds himself engaged in a conversation with Sumeragi, who surprisingly brings up the possibility of peace, highlighting Mikoto's lack of civilization despite being human. In a strange turn of events, Mikoto allows Sumeragi to live and explains that it's because he has faith in Saltarine rather than the peculiar ogre. With a single punch, Saltarine defeats the tree ogre, earning the gratitude and acknowledgement of the lizardmen and elves for saving their lives. Winnie congratulates Saltarine, who is completely exhausted and yearns for some much-needed sleep. In the confusion, Milia flees, undoubtedly terrified after witnessing Saltarine's incredible power. When Saltarine awakens a day later, she finds Hawthorne sitting at the bar, engrossed in a conversation with the leaders of the elves and lizardmen. Saltarine can hardly believe that her plan for peace is slowly coming together. After reaching the town plagued by vampires, Saltarine realizes that the humans there despise demi-humans. Hawthorne suggests getting a room and advises Fra to sneak in later, so as not to upset the humans. Carrot, however, is angry about the way they are avoiding the issue and making Fra hide to please the humans. While Hawthorne and Saltarine secure a room, Frau and Carrot go shopping. Frau encounters mistreatment from a shopkeeper when trying to buy carrots. Carrot is furious and can't understand why Frau tolerates such treatment. Frau explains that she's used to it, as it has been happening for a long time, but people like Saltarine make things better. Carrot struggles to believe that Saltarine is not part of the problem as well. Carrot expresses her desire to kill all humans and tracks down the vampire, who is actually a powerful ogre with blood-manipulating abilities named Kukitsuki. Kukitsuki challenges Carrot to kill the humans herself, but becomes intrigued by Saltarine upon learning that she defeated Set, the walrus ogre, and Juki, the tree ogre. Meanwhile, Frau locates Carrot and persuades her to come with her, likely having overheard parts of their conversation. Kukitsuki reveals that he has some business with Saltarine and advises Carrot to go with Frau. However, Frau now has her own business with Kukitsuki. They engage in a fight, and it reaches a climax when Kukitsuki destroys Frau's upper half with his ogre cannon. Just then, Saltarine arrives, drawn to the power of the ogre. Overwhelmed with anger, she attacks Kukitsuki. His ogre powers do not work on her, but they affect her clothes, which he uses to restrain her. Carrot tries to intervene, but then Frau miraculously revives and unleashes her dark powers. With one punch, Frau defeats Kukitsuki. In that moment, Kukitsuki reveals that he had been living as a human and had even found happiness with a girl. However, on their wedding day, his ogre power took control, leading to her death. Kukitsuki had hoped that Carrot would be free from that curse. Well, do we wish to continue this story? Please let me know in the comments below. If you're enjoying these videos, I'd be thrilled to create a video that covers the full season. But I need to hear from you first. If you don't express your enjoyment, there's no point in making these videos. I'm making them for you. I understand that it's challenging for me to compete with the big channels, but with your support, I can strive to do better and provide the best videos I can. I don't have a team. I'm doing this all alone, so there may be mistakes or delays you come across. I apologize for any inconveniences. Please consider liking and subscribing to support this channel. Your support means the world to me. Thank you.